Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we diving deep into one of the most terrifying and transformative events in human history, the Black Death. Imagine a world where a mysterious illness sweeps across continents, wiping out nearly half the population. It sounds like something out of a disaster movie, but for people in the 14th century, it was a horrifying reality. So, what exactly was the Black Death? It was a devastating global pandemic of bubonic plague that struck Europe and Asia from 1346 to 1353. The culprit was a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. This nasty little germ lived in fleas, which in turn lived on rodents, particularly black rats. These rats were everywhere in medieval society, hitching rides on merchant ships and traveling along bustling trade routes. As these ships docked in ports from the Black Sea to Italy, they weren't just unloading silks and spices. They were unleashing an invisible army of infected fleas. The pandemic is believed to have originated in Central or East Asia. From there, it traveled along the Silk Road, reaching Crimea by 1347. The story of its arrival in Europe is particularly grim. During a Mongol siege of the Genoese trading post of Kaffa, the attackers, who were dying from the plague themselves, reportedly catapulted infected corpses over the city walls. This is one of history's earliest and most horrifying examples of biological warfare. When the Genoese merchants fled Kaffa by ship, they unknowingly carried the plague with them, introducing it to Sicily and then mainland Europe. Once it hit, the disease spread with terrifying speed. It wasn't just the bubonic form, which was transmitted by flea bites. There were two other, even deadlier variations. The pneumonic plague infected the lungs and could be spread simply by coughing or breathing, person to person. Then there was the septicemic plague, where the bacteria entered the bloodstream directly, causing death within hours, sometimes before any major symptoms even appeared. The symptoms of the bubonic plague were unmistakable and horrific. Victims would develop high fevers, chills, and vomiting. But the most infamous sign was the appearance of buboes, hence the name bubonic. These were painfully swollen lymph nodes, usually in the groin, armpits, or neck, that could grow to the size of an apple. They would often turn black as the tissue died, which is likely where the name Black Death comes from. For most, death was swift and agonizing, usually occurring within a week of the first symptoms. Picture the scene in a medieval city. Carts roamed the streets with people calling out, "Bring out your dead." Mass graves were dug to accommodate the sheer volume of bodies. Entire villages were wiped out. Social structures completely broke down. Parents abandoned their sick children, and priests refused to perform last rites, terrified of catching the disease themselves. No one understood what was causing it. Was it a punishment from God? A poisonous alignment of the planets? Bad air or miasma? People were desperate for answers, and tragically, for scapegoats. This led to horrific persecution of minority groups, particularly Jewish communities, who were falsely accused of poisoning wells. Doctors at the time were helpless. Their medical knowledge was based on ancient Greek theories of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They believed illness was caused by an imbalance of these fluids. Their treatments were, by modern standards, bizarre and ineffective. They tried bloodletting, lancing the buboes to drain them, and prescribing strange concoctions of herbs and crushed emeralds. Some doctors wore bizarre, beak-like masks filled with aromatic herbs, believing this would protect them from the bad air. While they looked terrifying, the masks may have offered a slight, accidental benefit by keeping them at a distance from their patients. The sheer scale of the death toll is hard to comprehend. It's estimated that the Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people. In Europe alone, it's believed that 30% to 60% of the population perished. Think about that for a second. In some cities, like Florence, the death rate may have been as high as 80%. Society was turned upside down. With so many dead, there was a severe labor shortage. This had a completely unexpected and revolutionary consequence. Before the plague, Europe operated on a rigid feudal system. Peasants, or serfs, were tied to the land and worked for a lord in exchange for protection. They had very few rights and no real way to improve their station in life. But after the Black Death, everything changed. With so few workers left, those who survived found their labor was suddenly in high demand. They could demand higher wages and better working conditions. For the first time, they had bargaining power. Many serfs abandoned their old feudal obligations and moved to cities in search of better opportunities. This massive shift in power dynamics helped to weaken the old feudal system and lay the groundwork for a more modern capitalist economy. The world was, quite literally, rebuilt by the survivors. The psychological impact was also profound. The constant presence of death changed the way people thought about life, religion, and art. The Danse Macabre, or Dance of Death, became a common artistic theme, depicting skeletons leading people from all walks of life, from popes to peasants to their graves. It was a stark reminder that death is the great equalizer. The Church's authority was also questioned. Its inability to explain or stop the plague, and the loss of so many clergy, led many people to lose faith or to seek more personal, direct forms of worship. This shift in religious sentiment is seen by some historians as a precursor to the Protestant Reformation that would sweep across Europe a century and a half later. So, could something like the Black Death happen again? Well, the plague hasn't completely disappeared. Yersinia pestis still exists, and small outbreaks occur around the world, though they are rare. The good news is that we now understand what causes it. We have antibiotics like streptomycin and tetracycline, which are highly effective at treating the plague if caught early. Modern sanitation, public health measures, and pest control also mean that a pandemic on the scale of the Black Death is extremely unlikely. We no longer live in a world where rats are constant companions on ships and in our homes. However, the story of the Black Death serves as a powerful reminder of how vulnerable we can be to infectious diseases. It shows how a tiny, invisible organism can bring the most powerful empires to their knees and reshape the course of human history. It highlights the importance of science, medicine, and global cooperation in the face of a health crisis. The world that emerged from the ashes of the plague was fundamentally different from the one that came before it. It was a world where labor had value, old power structures were crumbling, and new ideas were beginning to take root. It was a brutal, terrifying chapter in our history, but one that ultimately paved the way for the Renaissance and the modern world we live in today.